Blue.
What are we talking about today, Ben?
Blue. We're going to continue our conversation. We started on Tuesday. I have muy bueno more thoughts. Muy bueno.
Very
mucho,
good, more
That did not make sense to me.
Mucho thinkos.
I think when you said muy bueno, or what did he say? Muy bueno.
I said a lot of things, Ty.
He said some naughty words too.
Who would like to pray for us? Steve, go ahead.
Oh, Lord, pray that you help us to set any anxious thoughts at your feet and listen to Ben here, because you have good things in store for us in this life and your, particularly in life down the road. Help us to grapple with your truth and apply it to our lives, that we might be set free from sin and find new life.
Amen.
Amen.
So, I'm going to read a couple of verses here. One, Ecclesiastes, chapter 4, verses 7 through 12, say this. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man, he was all alone. What's meaningless?
Being alone.
Being alone is meaningless. He didn't have a son or a brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless. A miserable business. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands, it ain't quickly broken, y'all. Proverbs 27:17. Somebody recite that.
Iron.
So one man sharpens another.
Very good. So last week, 2 days ago, we spoke about David and Jonathan. And what did Jonathan do for David?
Gave him a bunch of stuff and
Made a covenant.
covenant.
All right, so we have a covenant that took place, and he gave him his
robe, sword,
robe and tunic, armor or weapons, armor and weapons, belt.
what was the other thing? Was there another thing? There were 4. Robe and tunic.
His shield, they
Oh,
gave him
that's
his
it.
shield.
I think that's it.
A shield is technically armor.
So
Yeah.
the robe and tunic, what does this represent?
Birthright.
Oh. Birthright / identity.
Basically the crown.
How crazy is that? Let's just stop and pause for a moment. Just at that. You've got an heir to the throne, Jonathan, and David walks in holding Goliath's head, and Jonathan right then and there is like, this guy's got to be king, not me. That is epic. Man, that's just crazy to me. So it says their souls were knit together, right? Souls were knit together. Let's read 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 18. Yeah, no, that was that one. Yep, no, look, that was the covenant stuff. Never mind. Scrolling down. Okay, here we go. Before we read 1 Samuel chapter 20, we'll talk about 1 Samuel chapter 20. I had a friend when I was 11, my parents got divorced, and I turned into a very hateful kid. Hated my parents, hated my dad, hated my mom, hated the counselor that they were trying to send me to, hated God, hated everyone. Like, I could not believe that my world just got as wrecked as it did at the age of 11. At the age of 12, I had a man by the name of Nate Agramson. He was not a man yet. He was also my age at the age of 12. This is who my firstborn is named after. This guy, why? I don't know, but he saw the trouble I was having at the age of 12, and he decided to jump into my life. And I'm telling you, beyond a shadow of a doubt in my mind, I would not be here standing in front of you right now if it weren't for Nate Agramson. God's grace through Nate Agramson absolutely changed my life.
Bless you.
He just invited me over to his house, like, hey, can you come spend the night at my place? I was like, sure. And he was just the only person in my life that was safe to talk to. It wasn't safe to talk to my mom or my dad about it. It's way too volatile. It wasn't safe to talk to the counselor about it, at least in my mind. Even my sister, I didn't want to talk to my sister about it. She didn't want to talk to me about it. It was just, I was so alone, and he says, hey, come over and spend the night at my place. And he just starts asking me questions, and I started answering them, and he was showing me compassion. And I'm telling you, it felt like our souls got knit together that night on that first one. That's what it felt like. I felt so connected. I felt more connected to Nate Agramson than I'd ever felt with anybody before. That was just absolutely precious. At the end of that first night of me spending the night at his place, we stayed up till like 4 o'clock in the morning, and all he was doing was asking me about my pain. A 12-year-old! That's just ridiculous. By the end of that night, from that moment on, every time we ever spoke, we told each other we loved each other. To this day. We don't talk anywhere near as much these days. But no matter what. From the age of 12, I mean, that's just ridiculous to me that two 12-year-old boys could have that happen and from that point on say, I love you, no matter what. It's just crazy. So, 1 Samuel chapter 20. I'm not going to have us read it because it's a very long chapter. But here's what happened. I'll just tell the story, basically, okay, in shorter form. So there's this party that happens because David goes out and he slays like tens of thousands, and this party takes place where everybody's like, oh man, Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands, and what's Saul's response to that? Hi?
I asked him like his reaction.
Yeah, Saul's reaction to...
I think he got jealous.
Yeah, he got insanely jealous, and so then what happens? Ty?
Didn't he attempt to try and capture or kill
David? Yep. Saul goes into this depression, and he turns into this like manic guy, where at one moment he's asking for David to come play his harp because David's the only one that can comfort him, and then in the next moment he's throwing spears at him trying to kill him. Like literally, that's what was going on. So Saul creates this plan to kill David, and David ends up in this cave, in this kind of stronghold. So that's a cave. So David ends up in this cave, and Jonathan comes out to meet him. and David says, dude, your dad's trying to kill me. And Jonathan's like, no way. My dad is not trying to kill you. And David's like, yeah, man, he is. Your dad is trying to kill me. And the language that's being spoken of, you can read it in 1 Samuel 20 if you want to. But David is like making these big promises. Like, Jonathan, I swear on my soul, I am not lying to you. Your father is trying to kill me. And then Jonathan is saying, I swear on my soul, I really don't think that he is. And so they have this big, giant commitment conversation where, you know, these two souls are knit together. Big, giant commitment. So then Jonathan says, tell you what, I'm going to go back to my dad. And I'm going to play things a certain way so that I can find out if my dad is indeed trying to kill you. I promise you that's what I'm going to do. So, tomorrow, or the next day, or whatever it was, tomorrow is the next day. At some point in the future, I think it was the next day, Jonathan says, we're going to be in this field, and we're going to be near your cave. Of course, none of these guys that I bring with me are going to know that you're in that cave. But I'm going to shoot some arrows. And if the arrows, because I'm going to play it like it's target practice or whatever. I'm going to shoot some arrows, and if the arrows land up here, that means my dad is indeed trying to kill you. But if the arrows land over here, that means you're safe, you can come back to Israel. So what happens is, he ends up shooting the arrows up there, and David knows right then and there, yep, it's true. And not only that, but David has to be separated from Jonathan from that point on. And it's this big, sad sob story. So he shoots the arrows up here. David knows that it's done. Then Jonathan tells one of his servant boys or whatever, says, hey, go pick up the arrows. He says, I'm going to go pick up the arrows. There, that's what it was. I'm going to go pick up the arrows. You guys go ahead and head back. So he goes up to pick up the arrows. The boys head back, and Jonathan has a conversation with David where they weep in each other's arms over the fact that they're never going to see each other. David, of course, is going to be hiding in caves for a considerable amount of time trying to figure out how to make things work. But the commitment language over and over and over again in that chapter 20 is just, it's unprecedented in the rest of Scripture. The only other place where it comes close is in the book of Ruth, between Ruth and Naomi. So the thing that's crazy to me is that it seems in our nation, it doesn't even feel like we're trying to have a relationship like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Megan.
Can I say something quick?
Yeah.
So, I've heard countless times and seen on the internet with this story that, which just kind of shows why it's unsafe in our nation for men to be so close. But
Yeah.
they say that, this proves that David and Jonathan were gay lovers, basically.
Right, yep.
Like, they're so close, they're knit together. It means they
Yeah.
love each other, like, romantically.
Right.
Which then men go, can't get that close because,
Yep.
yeah.
We talked about the hermeneutics. What does hermeneutics mean? Anyone?
Interpretation.
Interpretation, study of interpretation,
yeah.
interpreting the Bible. That is part of the gay and lesbian hermeneutic. So the gay and lesbian group that want to be gay or lesbian and be a part of the church, or be a homosexual male or a homosexual female and be a priest or a pastor, that's exactly what they do with this passage, is they say, yep, see, David and Jonathan, they were gay. And it just completely avoids the fact that David was such a man of God and would have understood the Old Testament, Genesis through Deuteronomy, and what it meant to be a homosexual, just completely avoids it. We don't need to go down that path. I think it's pretty clear that we don't need to defend it. It's just absolutely bad. But yes, and I'm not just saying men either. I'm not just talking men. Men and women really lack this type of covenant relationship, where they are so incredibly tight that they know everything about each other. Now the thing is too, with Nate Agerson, he was an absolute gift from God. He was a gift from God. His personality was a lot like mine. We got along so well, so easily. We understood each other so well that he was just a gift from God. So I recognize that when we think about this type of covenant relationship with someone else, it's like, when do I find that person? How do I find that person that can be knit so close like that? And I'll say this. It's not just about meeting and personality. It's more about humility. It's mostly about humility. That's the most important part, is about humility. And openness and willingness to engage and having Christ be absolutely the center of the relationship. That's what's most important. So you don't have to have somebody that is Mr. or Mrs. Perfect personality-wise. So, open your Bibles to Matthew 5. I just want to clear something up because I need to make some noise. Okay, Matthew 5. Here we go. Matthew 5, verse 33 through 37. Somebody read it.
Again you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. You said 37?
Yep.
Right. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil.
Don't take oaths. Don't swear by anything. Well, if we read 1 Samuel 20, that's all we see. We see David making oath after oath after oath, and Jonathan making oath after oath after oath, and swearing by their everything. We see it over and over and over again. And then Jesus comes in, and not only that, but I'm saying this is precious. So, then you have Jesus say, don't do that, don't do that.
Even if it's the military?
Or like if you're in court, you know, like put your hand on the Bible and swear, raise your right hand. Does that mean we're committing sin if we do that?
What kind of oaths are we talking about here?
Well, it's saying don't swear falsely, and it's by some of the things they're swearing upon are things they have no control over.
Okay.
I was just going to expand on that. Is it kind of like I made an oath with a friend in like 5th grade that we'd be each other's maid of honors, and it wasn't Amy.
Uh-oh.
But she asked me to be hers, so she kept it, but I didn't. But I mean, like, is it kind of like that? It's like kind of like when Paul says, like, don't say you're going to go to this city or that city. Say if it is God's will, then it will happen. That kind of
Very good thoughts.
Okay.
And that works in perfectly with what we're going to say here.
cool.
Did you have something, Ty?
Could that be like an interpretation of like saying like how don't make empty promises in a way?
Absolutely.
So.
So Megan made an empty promise.
You're great.
I'll be your baby. You can be my baby. Anyway, that's exactly what this is getting at, though. I mean, it really is.
It was really weird because we hadn't talked to each other in 2 years. It's like, hey, I'm getting married. You want to be my maid of honor? I'm like, okay. Sounds good. It was really weird. I didn't know anyone there.
Okay, so what Jesus is referring to here is in the Jewish culture, they were swearing by all kinds of different things. They would say, I'll swear by the temple, but if you swear by the gold in the temple, that's even more of an oath. It's true. That's what was going on. People would make all these promises. It's kind of like if I say to my kids, yes, I'm going to go to the play that you're in. And my kids go, do you promise? Right?
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure that I'm going to be there. And so it's one thing if Dad says I'm going to be there. It's another thing if Dad promises he's going to be there. That's what Jesus is getting at here. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Period. If you say I'm going to do it, it's as strong as any covenant oath you can make. That's what Jesus is getting at.
Okay.
If you say you're going to do it, it is as strong as the covenant that you take it as seriously as the covenant that God did with Abraham. That's what he's getting at. Does that make sense?
Apparently I have to get married again.
Basically, like, don't make a promise that you know that you can never keep.
Right. Right. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. So, this, right here, this is still precious. This is absolutely precious. But, it's yes and no. It's not, you have to swear these oaths. It's, if you say you're going to do it, you do it. And if you say you're not going to do it, then you don't do it.
What about the option of doing it later?
What did you say?
The option of doing it later.
Oh.
Like, yeah, I'll do it, but not right now.
That's
So,
okay.
yes.
I think, I don't know what to say.
I mean, it depends on the circumstance. Like, hey, can you hand me that right now? Yeah, I'll do it later.
There's a parable where two servants are asked to help out in the field or something like that. One of them says they'll do it, but then they don't, and then one says they won't, ends up doing it. Which one is the best thing there?
Right? It's better to say no and do it, and do the right thing, than to say, yeah, I'm going to do it, and don't do it. That's good. That's a good point.
There's a lot of betrayal that comes with that too. Like if you say, oh yeah, I will come to your birthday party, and then even though you might have 50 people there, that one person that said they would, and you're like really pumped about it, and then they don't. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I got held up at something. And still it's like, oh, well. And you feel like, well, we betrayed you.
Right. So the point is,
Don't commit
integrity.
to anything.
The point is, never commit to anything in your life, because then
Yeah.
people will... Yeah, this isn't legalism, but it is saying, if I'm committing to something, I'm committing to it. If I'm not, then... Anyway. So, as it goes to with accountability, think about this, okay? So, let's say you've got some guys in an accountability partnership, and one of them says, I'm really struggling with lust, and I've been looking at pornography. And the other one says, what are you going to do about that? And he says, well, I'm not going to look at pornography this week. Okay. So then they go a week, they get back together again. How'd you do? I looked at pornography again. Well, what are you going to do about it? I'm not going to look at pornography. Okay, they go a week, and then the following week they get back together. How'd you do? I looked at pornography again. Okay. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you're going to say you're not going to look at porn, then don't look at it. But one of the problems with accountability groups is it can be like, well, I don't know what to do if they just keep blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, I'm sorry you had a rough time this week. You know, you looked at it every week for the last month, and you promised every time. But that's okay. You don't have an issue with integrity. Wrong, you do. You have an issue with integrity. Okay, there is a report that came over the interwebs recently. Our church, New Life Community Church, used to be a part of Great Commission Church network of churches, and some of you may have heard the name Mitch Majeski. He's a pastor in one of those churches in Colorado. And Mitch was an unbelievably, he didn't die. He is an unbelievably talented guy. And I've had a few interactions with him, not a lot, but every time I had an interaction with him, I was very impressed. This man really seems to have a heart after God. It just seemed apparent to me. So talented, so gifted. He was the head pastor of a church in Colorado, 2,000 people-ish, maybe more. I don't know. But we're talking about a very gifted guy. So over the interwebs a couple of months ago, Mitch Majeski announces to his church that he has to step down from being a pastor. And not only is he stepping down from being a pastor, he's stepping down from even being a part of their church anymore. He's leaving the church. The reason being, there's been some character flaws, a character flaw or more than one character flaw, and that one of the issues has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's to the point where it's ruined me, I have to step down. He says it wasn't infidelity, so I don't want to point to that. I don't know what it was. But he had to step down from being a pastor, and not only that, leave the church. So this begs me the question, why did this happen? Was it necessary for this to happen? Is this just a thing that we're supposed to just expect in the church? That a guy who's the pastor will have character flaws and they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger until the point where he has to leave? Should that be normal?
No.
No, that should not be normal. Should it ever happen?
No.
Okay, so if you think about David and Jonathan, I wonder if we'll get to heaven and find out that Jonathan has way more rewards than David. Maybe we'll get to heaven and we'll find out that Barnabas has way more rewards than Paul. Maybe. I don't know. But here, I'd be willing to bet just about anything in this situation with Mitch that he did not have men in his life that were like Jonathan. He didn't have men in his life that held him accountable. He didn't have men in his life that I saw him swiping it.
Yeah, I wasn't going to.
I thought he was just playing with his backpack. Like, oh, what's that sound?
One of those music bags or something?
So, yeah, I'd be willing to bet that if Mitch had real accountability in his life, this whole debacle wouldn't have happened. It would have gotten exposed, it would have been dealt with, it would not have been allowed to get bigger, and he'd still be in ministry today, having learned the lessons about his own weaknesses, because we all have them. Let me ask you this. Why did David become king? He was God's chosen.
Man after his own heart.
He was a man after God's own heart.
Are we talking about the logistics of why he became king?
Yep.
Okay. Other than God's desire?
Other than God's desire. Something else had to happen in order for God's plan to be worked out.
Jonathan stepped down.
Jonathan had to step down. He willingly stepped down. Let me ask you this. So Jonathan and Saul both die in battle. David becomes king. Yeah. Years go by. David has all these successes and everything's great.
Bathsheba.
And then he ends up sticking back, hanging back from war, looks out over from his roof down onto another roof where a beautiful woman is bathing. Let me ask you this. Do you think that David would have made that mistake if Jonathan were still alive and in his life the same way that he was when he was younger?
No?
I'd like to say no.
I'm thinking if Jonathan was still alive, Jonathan would have been saying to David, "Are you kidding me? You are not staying home. You're going to war with the rest of us. You would not, this wouldn't happen." Yeah. So,
I just had like a revelation. God probably allowed Jonathan to die, so that way David could go through that to learn a very good lesson. And to trust in God.
and to teach all the rest of us.
And to teach all the rest of us. Or else David would have just been like, successful, successful, successful. Like nothing.
Like Joseph. Joseph, that guy drives me crazy in the Bible.
This guy not ever make a mistake. Ah!
Oh, the one in the Bible, okay.
But Joe, don't give Ben Beck's marker, he doesn't want it.
Integrity and accountability stuff, like, well, a little backstory, like my dad used to put a lot of pressure on me to, if I disagree with him, he would yell at me, and I was expected to give an oath or promise or whatever, say whatever he wanted to say.
Yeah.
I've been in life groups or accountability groups where it's somewhat similar, where there's a lot of pressure on you, and you're like, I don't think I can do it, but sure, I'll say yeah. And so then the value of an expectation of what people's promises are just goes to crap.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And that happens in accountability groups all the time. It's tragic.
like, what
Yeah.
do you do about that, though?
Yeah. Well, here's what I was waiting till I wasn't looking.
Guard is down.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Good job, Joe.
Okay.
So Pete, respect for that one.
All right.
Yeah,
So, since we're coming down towards the end of the time here, I have somebody look up Hebrews 10.
We're at
Hebrews 10, 23 through 25.
Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching.
Okay, so just as Steve was just talking about, like, man, it can end up being a bunch of empty promises where the yes and the yes and the no, and they're not what they should be. So accountability can have this, it can be a little tainted when we think about accountability. Here we've got the author of Hebrews. Maybe it's Paul, maybe it's Apollos, maybe it's someone else, we don't know. We've got the author of Hebrews writing, saying, let us spur one another on. So we don't give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, right? But we spur one another on and we encourage each other, which are not, those two are not the same thing. Which is just another commentary on our stupid American church, that if we give up meeting together, some people go to church and they say, well, I'm not disobeying Hebrews 10 because I don't give up meeting together. I go to church and I pretend like everything's okay, and you're perfect and I'm perfect, and then I go home and I totally never spur anyone on, never encourage anyone. I just put on a fake face, and that's my Christianity. Sorry, but they are indeed disobeying Hebrews 10. If you're going to give up meeting together, it means this is what's happening. You're not doing these things. You can be together and not be together, right?
Sounds like bad relationship.
So, spur one another on. This word this is the perfect word for this in our language. Sometimes other translations say motivate.
Me.
Spur one another. This means rattle someone's cage, make them uncomfortable. Hey, wake up! Slap them across the face. Let's go. We've got business to do. If If Jonathan were there with David, he would have slapped him across the face. We're going to war. You're not staying here, you idiot. Sorry, I got passionate. That's what spur means. You rattle their cage. You do not allow them. You don't speak to them in a way that is, oh, it's okay that you don't have integrity. No.
How do you balance that?
Well, then you've got encouragement. What the word literally means is to come alongside and get under the yoke with someone else and take as much weight off of them that you can possibly bear to help them move forward. That's not the same thing as spur. So encouragement comes in when someone is desperately discouraged and they're, how you balance these two. When might spurring be appropriate? You tell me. And when might encouragement be appropriate?
Spurring might be when they have accepted their sin, they don't have a problem with it.
Absolutely. Accepted sin. Or deliberately making a decision they know is not appropriate. So deliberate disobedience.
What if you tried smacking them in the face? Then what?
Well, you may have smacked them when you were probably better to encourage them. So you'd have to ask, did you do it in the right way? But if they are accepting of their sin and they're deliberately disobeying, or they're just making a decision that they're just not thinking about, it's like, dude, if you'd stop and think for 1 second, would God be okay with me doing this? You would know He's not okay with you doing that. In that case, you spur them on. Hey, wake up. Do you realize what you're doing here? Come on. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Encourage means if someone is defeated, they're failing, they have failed, they feel like a pile of garbage, but they're humble about it and they're working on it. That's when encouragement can come into play.
What if they know they're screwing up and they're not working on it?
Then you take it beyond.
Beyond.
Their yes is not yes. Their yes is no. They're going to say whatever they want to say to not be in trouble, but ultimately they're not modifying their behavior. They do have continued sin in their life. Then you need to take it to the next step.
Just 2 witnesses.
Yep. Sigo.
I'm trying to think if I could share some information with her, but I was just going to say that at one point I was, how to say, it was a very, brought to light that there's a lot of negative thoughts or emotions or things that I believed about myself. And we even wrote it down on little messages, put it on me, and it's like, well, they asked, are you going to take that off? It's like, well, even if I did, it'd still be true. It's just there. And they called me to be angry about that, because no one should be, I'm a child of God, and no one deserves that kind of label.
Yeah.
And they were crying when they were saying it. They saw how it was impacting my life, and when they finally drew out that anger out of me, that spurring me on, that I just accepted it or whatever, I was able to push it away, I guess.
Let it go.
And they actually first wrapped me in a blanket and
Okay.
taped around it.
Nope. Good though. You gotta win. You gotta win. All right. So take that. 1, 2.
Quite a struggle.
Oh yeah, Ben knows how to count.
1, 2. No, I know how to count up to 4.
Count as spurgement.
What?
A count as spurgement.
I count encouragement because I don't like accountability. And if you leave spur all by itself, that's a mistake. If you leave encouragement by itself, that's a mistake. So we have a count encouragement.
It looks like asparagus.
That's what I read.
I think that, no.
How many
Close.
asparagus do you have? I don't know. Let me count asparagus.
Okay, so here, let me let me finish up here, and then I want some suggestions on what you guys maybe would like to hear more about. Okay, so at the top, account discouragement. I want to push myself, but not bite off more than I can chew. This isn't about perfect performance, but rather about growth and your state of heart. This is it. That next line. This is where my conscience is right now, and that can be fluid from week to week. Okay, so you're just honest about where your conscience is when you're filling out this sheet. Next, this is in no way trying to earn any favor from the Lord or my fellow man, but rather trying to order my life in such a way to bring God the most glory and bring myself the most joy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Okay, so what you will do, if and when you decide to be you can do this in your account or in your Barnabas groups. That's perfectly okay. To do this in your Barnabas groups if you want to choose that. Or if you just want to have somebody that is just specifically for this, that's okay too. But what you'll do is each week you fill out, or however often you meet, which I think you ought to meet weekly. If you give it too much time, then it's too easy to screw up and hide it. So each week, you would circle one of the sins that you're struggling with, or several, whatever sins you are struggling with, okay? The things that you wish you were doing better in, whatever areas those are. I've got other there, and there's a bunch of space. If there's other sins that are more, you know what they are, and they're not listed here, then put it in that other section. And then, these are questions that you ask each other. How did you do in your time with God this week? How have you done this week in the above list of sins? So that's like, okay, open up, tell me how'd you do. You said this last week, did you do it or did you not? In your circle of influence, who should we pray for salvation? That's something everybody should have accountability for. Is your conscience clear with your financial decisions?
What is the importance of that? Because it seems kind of unconnected.
We need to be focused on the lost. And if we're not focused on the lost, that says something about our perspective on life. So that's why I throw it in there.
Isn't it also, I think I've also heard, like if you're not focused on others, then you're focusing on yourself, so then you fall into selfishness, anxiety, depression, all that, and it's because you're always just looking at yourself, but then it helps a lot when you're looking at others with all these things.
Absolutely. Have you demonstrated a servant's heart? I like this one. Is your conscience clear with the smut that you've been watching or listening to?
Shouldn't be, just by the word.
Have you been prideful or greedy? Have you felt compassion for others this week? That's very similar to the pray for salvation. Have you felt compassion? It just tells you where you're at, where your heart's at. If your heart's in a good spot, you will experience compassion for other people. Is your conscience clear with how you were taking care of your body? Are you telling the whole truth or belittling any of your behavior in any way? So just in case you didn't circle something up there that you know you should have, go back and circle it. Then you make commitments together. The commitment in my struggle with sin is whatever you want it to be. The commitment for my walk with God is whatever you want it to be. Commitment for my schedule, commitment for my health, for my work, and for daily self-review. I put that daily self-review down there at the bottom because I feel like that's when I do my best. Is when I start the day looking at my day and making commitments about my day. I make personal commitments about my day. I want to accomplish these things. I want to do these things. Then at the end of the day, I look at it again. How did I do? Did I line up with my commitments or didn't I? How's my conscience in this? Why didn't I do what I wanted to do? Figure it out, because that might be something you want to be held accountable for. That kind of thing. Okay, so you have those sheets. Make copies of it. If you want PDFs of that so you can print them out whenever, let me know. Sounds good. So, anybody, as we're talking about next things to talk about, things you want covered. Anybody have anything they really desperately want covered? Issues, concerns? Amy Josephini.
Like, I was just thinking about this, darn it. The point of, like, teachings and sermons. Does that make sense?
The point of them?
Kind of just like what we talked about that one time, like, how it's
Oh, just
hard-
taking it, yeah.
Yeah, like taking it seriously and why should we and what's God's intention for them and, like, for pastors and stuff.
Yep, good. Okay. Anybody else have anything? Jara.
Bitterness.
Bitterness. Jara?
Watching this debate and an atheist ask what makes like our view of the Bible and interpretation of the Bible more correct and some other people who interpret it a different way, like use the example of the KKK and how they were using the Bible and how like some cultures in Africa use the Bible to justify like things they do, and you know how in different parts of the world they put like women down or shoot women a certain way using the Bible, but like we don't see the Bible that way, but they're using the same text.
Yep.
So what makes ours correct? Because they believe it with all their heart, and we believe it with all our heart.
Right. Anything else?
Dating.
Day?
Dating.
Dating.
He means, like, dating things back.
Dating things.
Like
As far as like carbon
dating.
carbon dating. Okay, gotcha.
That's what you
Carbon
mean.
dating.
Corbin dating. How about anger with the bitterness, maybe? I could see you putting a slash there in my brain.
Yeah, I can probably use that one.
Anger, bitterness. Okay.
Angerness. Bittering. Can't
Result in
banger.
conflict.
Anger.
Megan.
Purposes in the church, like women's purposes, and then like men who aren't necessarily like pastors, I guess. Like how, I don't know, godliness, men and women godliness, I guess.
Roles in the church,
Roles,
maybe?
there it is, thank you.
Church
Like
roles.
I'm just
Church roles.
Should we eat whole wheat or white? How much butter is thin?
Put on a roll.
When you put it on a roll.
I used to eat butter when I was little.
There's too much
Were you
cholesterol.
eating butter?
Out of the tub, I would eat it like ice cream.
Politics.
I don't do it anymore.
Politics.
Bathtub, I heard bathtub.
Oh my.
What?
And which side we should be on.
Oh, politics.
I see.
Oh, that's a big one.
You should
I
be
don't
on
want to do
either.
that. I hate
All of us are
politics.
like, I hate politics.
I hate it so much.
You know,
It's probably
I don't
because
know
I
if
have to
this,
go on politics.
but
That's my problem. Is my dad is always just like,
So with my parents.
I don't know, just from where I'm from, I had a lot of people from other races or colors or whatever it is. I don't know. There's something along those lines, I guess. Just I've been really encouraged just interacting with other people from other countries and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
But kind of maybe outreach for the nations type thing, or how we evangelism, do that, world evangelism maybe.
Megan.
mysticism.
Mysticism?
Mysticism.
Myth-
That one.
myth-
Mysticism.
Can we something
Is
mysticism?
that like where you use oils to try to bring on a certain sense or something, maybe?
No.
Prophecy.
No.
3 times that.
Oils are not evil. There were oils back in Jesus' time. That was
True.
medicine back then.
Jesus was anointed with oil. So was David.
Yeah, but
Sure.
not.
I thought that was honey that
Tell me
David.
about that.
I should just say.
Or the rapture
Special oil.
in pre, post, and mid-trib.
He's getting all the big ones. My goodness. Jeepers creepers. Jared.
One way me and Pauline have been struggling with is like, how do you get your friends to take like God more seriously? Because they say they're Christians, but they don't act like it. And when you like meet up with them to hang out, they like don't do things or typically like Christian behavior, but then when you don't participate, they're like, but they're good friends and they're Christians, but they're not Christians.
Right.
So like, how do you make it so God is like the center of our relationship?
I will spit you out
Nah.
of my mouth.
Fed walkers. I just like the
And
phrase.
Pauline isn't here, but I'm gonna speak for her. She has a Muslim friend that she's been trying to talk to her about, like, God about, like, but she hasn't done it, and she's been getting convicted because, like, the world could end in any time, and then her friend will go to hell. But she hasn't, like, done it. She says she loves her, but if you love them, you should tell them the truth. But she doesn't know how to do it, so she's like, hey, like, you can worship your own God, like, this is all wrong, drop everything, come here.
Right.
You know, she doesn't know how to do it. And she's been putting it all on.
Yell it out. And
That reminds me of a story I heard
I don't
about,
know.
that apparently, like, in this one family, like, how a mother and a daughter, a mother was literally dying from a medical condition.
I see it.
And then, she's
Just watching like a
watching like a Christian,
yeah.
and she called the guy, and then the daughter took the phone and said,
If you don't my mother, I'll kill myself or something.
and then he was saying that the pastor like said like, please don't do that, and then tried
Right,
talking to them, and then something went around like saying like how the daughter gave God a challenge, or like Jesus a challenge, like show them why they should worship him and not their religion of the Muslim,
Right.
of Islam, and they're proven that when the mother got better.